Hi, welcome to Watch Me with Emily Galindo. I'm your host, and we are here proving others wrong with one success story at a time. And right now, what we're doing, and what we're proving is how to transform. I want to challenge everybody to consider that we should really take on the word and the language of transforming versus changing or grow or getting better. I think that when you say I want to get better at, or if I want to change something, it directly means that there's something wrong with you, or that there's something bad that needs to be changed. Transformation is a beautiful thing. I know that we always use the metaphor of like a butterfly transforming in a cocoon. That takes time, and when you are transforming, a lot of the time it's not a very graceful process. But this person that I have, our guest today, Mark McKay, has been able to transform not only his life, but how he shows up in life with such grace. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. And I'm super excited to have him share his story with you today. So I'd love to welcome my guest, Mark McKay. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today.
You are so welcome. I'm super excited because I genuinely mean that. Like, you are the most graceful person one of the most graceful people I've ever met. If you had a message for people, one person heard this podcast today and you made a direct impact that they were going to transform their life, what would your message to them be?
Starting with something very light, huh?
Simple very light. When I've got like a spiritual being in front of me, I need to get all the stuff right up front.
You say I'm graceful, but that grace has come at a price, right? It's not something I was born with. It's something I've had to learn. It's something I've been thrown into the fire, and I think being thrown into the fire, on the other side of that, maybe you come up with a little perspective. So, a friend of mine, this is going to sound just so simple, but there's so many layers. A really good friend of mine said, I'm okay. You're okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're just fine. But for so many years growing up and as a young man, just seeking, trying to look for validation, trying to find, am I okay? Am I doing this right? But at the end of the day, you know what? We're okay. We're just fine. And it's just difficult to navigate that sometimes.
So your message to everybody is you're okay.
You're okay. Right. So that sounds so simple. There's many layers if you want to peel back that onion.
Absolutely, I do. So and you've got to this place where I'm okay. And you do have to, even after all of the growth that you've been through and all the things, do you still have to tell yourself that in certain moments that to walk yourself through that coaching?
It's a daily reminder. I mean, life gives us so many different vantage points to see each day through. When I was young, I used to think, well, this is what I'm going to do forever. This is forever. And then you find 6 months down the road, it's not forever.
Right.
Somebody comes into my life and I think that they're going to be there forever. And then you learn that it's just for a season. Mm. And so I think when we try to cement ourselves into one place, one time, one thing, we find a lot of dissatisfaction. We get frustrated. Me being able to see that it's going to change. There are seasons in life. Mm-hmm. We're winter. We have certain expectations of the winter. Mm-hmm. It's time for plants and trees to go to sleep. It's time for dormancy. It's not time for activity.
Right.
And that's just the season of life that we're in today. And my background is horticulture, so I always talk about plants and what's happening with plant material and the growth habits of plants. And so I usually draw my perspective from what I do.
Right. I was just going to say, before we started recording today, we had talked about, for those of you who don't know, it's 80 degrees in Houston right now in December. And so you in your business, you own a commercial landscaping company, and you're supposed to be taking some time off right now. Mm-hmm. And it's 80 degrees. And so there's some things happening, I think, out in the world, or I would assume. I have zero plant. I kill plants. That's what I do. Yeah. But do you feel like and it sounded like when I asked you about business and being busy, you just were so graceful and going, yeah, it's just not the way it's the way it traditionally is, and we just move on and take it with stride, right? Like, versus saying, getting angry about the fact that it's not 40 degrees and you aren't taking time off and all of those types of things.
Well, I've spent many years getting worked up. I spent many years, much of my life, reacting. Um, through a series of transformation in my life, I found ways to look through the world with a different lens. Maybe the person that cut me off doesn't drive me nuts like they used to. I'm supposed to be resting, quote unquote, resting this time of the year as the plants are supposed to be resting. It's warm.
Yeah.
The weeds don't know they're supposed to be resting. And so I'm working more than I expected. And that's just how it goes today. It's just the season, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that transformation. You have not, as you mentioned, always been this graceful. What was Mark McKay like 5 years ago?
Mark McKay was angry. He was worried, very preoccupied with the future, and consumed by the past. You know, I was thinking about how the past and the future feels like the different worlds at Disneyland. Okay, you've got Tomorrowland and I have Futureland and Pastland, and they're just made up, right? They're just something that I create. And I spent a lot of time with my head in the future. I'm going to do this. I'm going to plan for that. I'm going to make sure this goes right. And I spent a lot of time in the past with a lot of regrets. So that was me 5 years ago.
Right. And that in its present tense, during those times, you showed up as angry because either the past had disappointed you and the future was uncontrollable, if you will. So I would assume that would make you very angry.
There was no present tense, right? I was just stuck in both worlds. I was stuck in the past land and the future land.
Yeah,
I could not really enjoy or be in the moment, and so I was aggravated, frustrated.
I've also been doing some work in that regard as well. When you've got small kids, right? Or at least I do, and now, and years are grown, thinking about they're not going to be this small for forever, and like trying to own that present tense journey. I heard a fascinating interview with Mo. I can remember his last name. He's the happiness expert. Anyhow, that if you look at the scope or the scale of different emotions, all negative emotions are either fixated on the past or the future, and all positive emotions like happiness, joy, gratitude are all present tense experiences. And so you're like, oh, well, if I'm feeling bad, that immediately you can go, I'm either thinking about the future or I'm thinking about the past, and neither one are right this moment.
Yeah.
So if you want to just right out the gate, if you want to be happier, moment.
It seems so easy, right?
Right.
Secret sauce.
Right. Well, of course, because the bills have to get paid, the kids have to get where they need to go, the business needs to grow. So how did Mark go from was there a tipping point for you? What was your watch me, I'm not going to live my life this way anymore moment for you?
Yeah, there's a series of events, I would say. I spent a lot of time working. I was working for my family. That's what I would tell myself. So I'd be gone many hours, right? And we have four kids. They're all adults now. And this is probably a common story, but until the time they grew up, moved out, and then my wife and I, empty nesters, I think my wife was doing the happy dance, and I looked back and said, I just lost all those years. Where was I? I was working. And I told myself I was working for them. I was working for the family. I was trying to provide for everybody, but I didn't take the moments. When I was at the baseball games, I was thinking about work. When I was at work, I was thinking about the baseball games, right? I was never present. And so when the kids finally became adults, went away, and moved out, I was left to deal with, oh, it's just me. It's my wife and I here now. This is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So why am I working so hard? Oh, why am I putting in the hours? Why am I doing 16-hour days? What is this? I had a story before, right? It was for the kids. It was for education. It was for, and that story was gone. And so I began
the excuse was gone,
right?
Yeah,
The story was there. The excuse was gone. And so there became a little feeling of, what do I do?
Were you still angry then?
I
The
was,
kids are gone. You don't
I
have as
believe
many
I
stressors.
was
But
fearful. I believe I was regretful. So it was more reflecting on the past. Oh, I wasn't around. They've moved out. I don't have the close relationship that I thought I wanted to have. I would always compare how I was raised, and I'm not going to do it like my parents did it.
yeah.
And then lo and behold, here I am working the same way my parents worked. They weren't present. And it's as if I didn't learn that lesson, right? And so I think that was the first thing that really got me thinking about missing out on the present moment. I lived with a lot of fear, and I didn't realize it was fear. But I think that the anger comes from the root of fear, and not really knowing how to handle that fear. It showed itself in just frustration and anger. So I reached out to some people around me, friends, asking if they had any suggestions, ideas, what to do. Their kids were moved out. How did they handle that? And the best advice I got was to speak with a couple people that I was introduced to that could provide me maybe a different perspective than I might have had from a traditional therapy or traditional advice. And so
were you offered that solution, like go to therapy, go to church and do the men's groups things, or like were you offered some of those?
I participated in all of that.
Okay.
And for some reason I still couldn't find, right? I couldn't figure out what this was, whether it was men's groups at church, whether it was professional counseling, a lot of self-help books and tapes and CDs. Okay, I say tape, you can age myself. CDs for sure. Anyway, podcasts, etc. And still empty, right? Still just not figuring out why I'm so afraid. And
what were you afraid of?
Yeah, I was afraid of facing myself. And I had been realizing now, as I reflect now, there were so many stories, so many storylines, so much programming that is going on in my mind for year after year after year, that I really didn't embrace who I was. I really didn't know myself, behaving and acting as if other people have their expectations of me. And so when you really look at yourself in the mirror and you say, what am I doing and why am I here? It was a little fearful for me.
Okay.
So I had to step into some uncomfortable areas. I can go down those roads for you. They may be a little unconventional.
Sure. Well, I mean, so you tried so you said that you trying to solve the fear problem. We tried the professional counseling and men's groups and podcasts and all of those things, and you just didn't feel like it, like maybe that it just didn't resonate with you, didn't align with that. So then some other options came towards you, and what were some of those?
Some of the most fearful things I could possibly do, as I was raised in such a strict and religious environment. I was really a good boy for many years, and
you were raised in the traditional sense: church, family, be
USA,
a man,
yeah.
USA, patriot.
Exactly.
Work out, because you're also like a strong fit coach, right?
Yeah, I've done that as well too.
We're gonna do the masculine men.
100% bought in.
That was it. That was your lot in life.
Exactly.
Until you started asking questions.
Yes.
Okay, and so then somebody in your life brought you an option, which was?
So a lady that was able to help me with some unconventional counseling, and not just talk therapy. She introduced me to some plants that...
how good for you as a horticulturist.
Exactly.
Right?
I understand about plants, I understand their benefits.
Sure.
And some of them have a lot of medicinal values to them.
Okay.
And me being so afraid of doing the wrong thing or going against the grain, this was a very challenging thing for me to do. So I did meet with them and her, and I stepped into this unknown space for myself.
Talk about fear.
You talk about fear.
No, I mean, but like how fearful, that would be a very scary place to be, right?
I was shaking and sweating.
Yeah.
And so This was plant medicine. Okay.
Okay. Could you give us some examples? Just, you don't have to say which ones you did, but like, what are some of those plant medicines that you're aware of now?
Well, I'm aware of psilocybin mushrooms. I'm aware of bufo. I'm aware of combo. These other indigenous medicines.
Okay.
So I'm aware of these. And my experience with the plant medicines was one that ripped my soul out.
Oh.
It was not the most pleasant of experiences, one might think.
That does not sound pleasant the way you describe it.
It was as if my entire family life and everything I'd ever thought of got ripped away from me. And coming back to, let's say, coming back to my consciousness, coming back to awake.
Right, this version of reality. Something clicked. I had lost everything, but I still had everything. Right.
Right.
Kind of like the it's Christmas time right now. What's the
like the Christmas Carol?
No, the miracle, not Miracle on 34th. The one about the George Bailey.
Yes. The Scrooge, right? Yeah, I took him to Christmas, past, present, and future.
No, the one where the black and white.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Thank you. Where he goes with the angel and finds, like, if he had never been born.
That was a really good example. So
yeah. Okay.
I wake up and I have my family. I have my life. But I experienced as if I didn't.
Sure.
I experienced the loss of everything at once. And from that came such gratitude. Such, thank you. It's like a second chance, right? It was like, George Bailey, I have a second chance. So it was the beginning. That right there was the beginning. I needed something to shake me up. I needed to step into my fear. I needed to be brave. And I said, what the heck? I hate who I am. I hate life. I don't care what happens at this point. Let's just try something totally off the wall.
Okay.
And that gave me the nudge I needed. I tell people it's as if rewiring happened, as if I had a software upgrade. Maybe I was running off of, and I don't know the current versions. I'm running off of Windows 95, right? That was my life. And I wake up and I'm now, the most current version of Microsoft,
whatever version that is.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
You get that update notification on your phone. It's time to update, and it was as if I got a complete update.
Okay, and so it just one and done, and your whole life was transformed, and that was that.
Well, one and done, and I was on the road to transformation.
Okay.
Because these experiences kind of exchanged the lens that I was seeing life through, given a new sight. And so everything has become new. I see things differently. It's a rewiring, a total upgrade. And so I can't even see life. I can't even see people. I can't even remember how to see them as if it was 5 years ago.
I was just going to ask, can you drop into 5 year ago Mark and see and walk yourself through my previous, I would have looked at it like this, but now I see it from this, or I
can see how I was, but without judgment. I can see, he didn't know any better.
Sure.
I had every tool that I knew to use, and I used them to their ability. They were just the wrong tool. It was like hammering a nail with a shoe. I mean,
good analogy.
I could get the nail in the wall, but it was crooked. It was a lot more work than it needed to be.
Yeah.
But through that experience, not necessarily one and done, but that was the first of maybe a few more.
And since then, you've tried different plants. You've tried different other types of maybe non-conventional therapies. Like you came to my house and did a cold plunge the other day. Right? Some meditation, yoga, breathing.
All of that has been brought into my world. And you say the cold plunge. So all of these fearful circumstances, it's like walking into a ceremony. I'm standing there at the ice bath. I'm afraid. What am I afraid of, right? I'm afraid of the unknown. I'm afraid of I guess I'm afraid of the unknown. I get in the ice bath and I say, wasn't so bad. Why was I so afraid?
Right.
And it actually began to feel good. And so I'm learning, continually stepping into the unknown
That is huge.
is really amazing, because the in the darkness, right? You've got the light and the darkness, and there's only shadows, right? When the sun reflects the shadows, you have to walk through the shadows to get to the sunlight. It's like the dark and the light exist together.
Mm-hmm. And you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. And so I'm walked through these shadowy, fearful situations only to become in the middle of the light. I mean, I have to go through the shadows to get to the light.
And it's the unknown of what's in the shadows, or what that experience, or I don't know, or maybe the shadows will never end. And I think that when you came out of the cold plunge, one of the really important things that you had shared was, like, if you just sit there long enough, yes, it's uncomfortable, everybody. It's 45 degrees. It's very uncomfortable. But if you just sit there long enough and breathe through it long enough for like a minute, and it goes away.
It goes away.
And you came out and you said that. You were like, this will pass. And I'm going to be honest, I've been in a lot of recovery rooms. Like, this too shall pass just annoys the shit out of me. It really does. You're like, yeah. Because it's hard when it's uncomfortable and sometimes painful, that you just want it to stop.
Yeah.
But if you don't, or I mean, if you just go walk through it, then you can come out on the other side with, you were excited and happy and proud, and
then your body feels amazing afterwards, right?
It does.
There's too many benefits to it.
Yeah, right.
The greatest benefit was just getting through the fear for me. I know there's all kinds of physiological benefits to ice baths.
Right.
But psychologically,
I'm going to be honest, I did not plunge this morning because I was afraid. I didn't want to deal with it. And like you said, standing next to the cold plunge is actually harder than doing the actual cold plunge. I spent 35 minutes, the time it was allotted for my cold plunge, right? And talking myself in or out. And I've been doing this 2 years. Talking myself in or out of doing it this morning. And I came to the conclusion that I was going to do it later tonight when I got home with my mom, because she's going to get in, you know what I mean? And I was like, I'll just do it later. But because I was afraid, I didn't want to get out there and go through the anticipation of it all, even though I know exactly what is going to occur.
Yeah.
And I just was like, nah, forget it. Never mind. But that fear, that anxiety, just experiencing the anxiety is what kept me from doing something that I knew that I needed to do for myself.
Yeah. Do you remember the movie, the Indiana Jones movie? I think it was maybe the Temple of Doom.
Okay.
Indy's at this chasm. There's this long expanse in front of him. He's on the edge, and he's got to get to the other side.
Oh, yeah, with the invisible bridge.
There's nothing there, right?
Yeah.
If you look closely, what I notice is there's no bridge. There's nothing there.
Right.
Until he lifts his foot up, and as soon as the gravity takes him, as soon as he can't step back, the bridge appears.
Right.
It's like he can't step back anymore, and until then the bridge shows up and he can walk across. It's like we have to step into that unknown. Just
describing that I can feel my heart rate increase. I can feel myself wiggling in my chair, and I can be like, that makes me uncomfortable thinking about taking that step.
Yeah.
So that is and I'm defining the theme, and everybody that I've talked to on this, that taking that first step is the thing that's keeping people stuck or feeling stuck. So I'm trying to figure out that between taking that first, like, how do we get from the watch me moment to taking that first step? Because I think people feel it. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this one day. Oh, I'm going to accomplish this, or I don't like what I'm up to. But then they won't take the very first step. They won't make the phone call. They won't schedule the appointment. They won't, whatever it is. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, it helped me having people around me that would encourage. And it really helps me to have older people around me that encourage, because I see their wisdom and I respect their wisdom. And so the friend of mine who had introduced me to this was an elder of mine, and I have a lot of respect for her. And I was like, well, she must know, right? She must know.
Fair, yeah.
I mean, I have that trust. That combined with, I just felt helpless.
Yeah.
No other options. Painted myself into a corner.
the thing we do say in recovery that does not drive me crazy is when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Just got to do something.
You'll do something. You'll do anything.
And I don't know that that's the most efficient way to get things done. Paint yourself in a corner.
Right.
And then, got to get out of it. But that seemed to work for me.
So, yeah, okay. And one of the reasons I brought you on is because I know your story of being, and I being an angry white cis male in the world. It seems to be a theme going on in what we're up to, right? And there is, having experienced dating with this generation of men that have been created, or having been married to, or, and seeing my friends with their significant others, that there is a huge gap in people like my father or Rick, my business partner, and you, which is about in their 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 35-year-olds, 35 to 40s right now that are I don't know what has happened to them, Mark. And I need you to talk to them or be with their elder or something. What can we say to them? How can, there's two versions. There's the non-participatory, I feel like I'm worthless in life version, or there's the toxic, misogynistic, I bring home the paper so you do whatever I say. Like, there's those are my two options in the world right now for men in my generation. So how can we help them? Because I have a theory. My theory is, I'm going to be honest, is some of your generation abandoned them or walked away from their responsibility of raising them to be good human beings in the world. Not to say that their mothers didn't try their best, but right. I don't know. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, probably so. I was thinking when I was in my 30s, I surrounded myself with men in their 50s and 60s. I didn't really spend time with my peers. I was a seeker, always seeking, and it seemed like there were a lot of men older than me that wanted to teach me. They had a desire. Maybe they had regrets, or maybe they just had a passion to teach, and maybe 7 or 8 men at a time would teach me, and I was hungry for it. I don't see men my age wanting to teach others, and I don't see what used to be my elders, those men that are now in their 70s and 80s. I'm like, where are you? We still need you. Us in our 50s, we still need you. You're not done. We still need you. And so
to coach me through the empty nester portion of my life,
exactly,
right? Like this season is something new for you, but not new for them. And just like the men below you in their 30s, they're having this, now it's time to grow up, right? Like, and be an adult and provide for your family. Like, we don't get to party and hang out and have fun anymore. Not that you can't, but
right.
That's a different season of being an adult.
Well, I experienced, here, I'll tell you another one. I went to a sweat lodge.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking a sweat lodge is some resort somewhere in Austin that's going to be, I don't know, people are going to cater to me. No, it was in the middle of nowhere with some handmade, it's not a teepee, but some sort of teepee thing. Some men heating up some hot rocks.
And that was it.
I mean, yeah, so there was no safety protocol. And I don't know, myself with maybe 20 other people crawl into this small little hide covered structure, and other men are bringing in these hot rocks, and I'm afraid, right?
Yeah.
I'm afraid. It's pitch black. I can't see anything.
Go ahead.
It's as steamy as it can be.
It's fucking hot.
It's fucking hot. And I'm afraid. And there's the chief there. Okay, he's the chief, and he's in charge, and he's running the show. And before we even get started, we're all gathering in, and I go, I don't know if I can do this. I'm afraid. And Chief is probably 20 years older than me, and he says, "What are you afraid of, Mark?" I go, "I don't know." He goes, "We're all here together in love. You're safe. You can leave if you want, but I encourage you to stay." And that settled me so quickly that this older man was there for me. He says, "You're safe. I've got you." And from that point, I was like, where are you men? Oh, I'm the elder. I've stepped into that role. I kept looking for my elder as well. I'm the elder.
You're the elder now.
I'm here. I'm available.
Okay.
So I guess we have to come to that aha moment and say, I'm not the kid anymore.
Yeah. And I don't know are there still groups out there? Like, I mean, I know that I remember growing up, like my parents were in the military and we had church and things like that. I remember my parents going to clubs and groups, and that was how they kind of built their community to be able to have those resources of support. And does that stuff still exist in the world?
I don't know. I used to go to a business networking group. And I was the only one at my age, and there were older people there, and so they took me under their wing. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to be part of more networking groups.
You can go to niahouston.com and see all of the events that we have coming up.
You like that one?
Thank
that
you.
One
I didn't even
teed it up for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, like that was how I ended up getting community and support in my young adult age, was finding professional networking. I had moved to a new state. I didn't know anybody, didn't go to high school in this area, and literally knew nobody to help build my business. So I literally tripped into a networking, which I'm finding that not nobody, but like 96% of the business community doesn't even know that professional networking is not just a place that you can get business, but this support that we're talking about in business, right? But on the personal side, are there, aside from like AA in church, I'm not really sure where these men are supposed to go to get support.
Well, I don't know the answer to that either.
I need you to start a new business,
I think
Mark.
so, huh?
I do. I need you to find more people like you and like create some sort of like, I don't know, orphanage home for these men who seem to have forgotten what being, maybe not forgotten, were never taught.
Yeah.
And as women have transitioned and transformed in their roles, like how do we counter them and balance each other in a way that is meaningful in both partners, in the partnership, right? But I feel like they've probably been left behind, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think maybe some men are just unsure of their role these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Raised one way and then now told maybe that's not quite the way, that maybe that's not the path we should be on.
Right.
And so I think a lot of men retreat, spend time alone, and probably don't seek anything outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I find your story so fascinating, being the, Christian, conservative, patriot, strong fit man, to go from like that version to you're still all of those things, and also finding a different perspective in life.
Yeah, it's a waking up. It is a rewiring and a waking up that is not explainable, but I think if you're seeking it, you'll find it.
What does your wife think of your transformation?
She sits back quietly and observes, and hopefully she is pleased and just saying thank you finally.
So for all the wives in the world, there is hope. We just got to give them some medicine. Potentially sure won't. I want you to be the chief of a sweat lodge with like 50 of my closest friends and their husbands, and like let's all like raise the vibrational pole of all of, it's just, my question to everybody when I'm talking about these particular topics is, which one feels better? Mark 5 years ago, feels better in your body. Mark 5 years ago or Mark today?
Yeah, absolutely Mark today. But Mark 5 years ago was trying to be somebody that wasn't him. And now I'm just being me. And one challenge as a man, I guess, is I've pulled away from those typical man things to do.
Such as?
Football, golf, hunting, fishing.
Okay.
It's like, okay, if you love them, great, that's fine. But I felt pressured. I have to do this stuff because I'm a man. And now I just do what I love. And so
what are some of those things?
If it's watching football, it's watching football. Unfortunately, like to see some of the college football around here, and maybe not my team doesn't always do their best, but I'm going to tune in every Saturday,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And root for them. So I can lift weights and do yoga, and
Right.
both are enjoyable to me, right?
Okay.
I mean, I love plants, right? Because it's my business, but I also enjoy it. So I spend time with my plants.
Okay.
And reading is powerful. I don't think we read enough. And
Amen.
I think that's just a missing, a lost piece of
Like
where we're at
cursive
today.
writing. It's like a lost
Cursive
art
writing,
form.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I have various interests, but I think to feel obligated to be and do one certain interest because you're a man is just, I don't know. Listen to the whispers is what I say.
I love
There's
that.
a whisper going on inside your heart. There are the voices in your mind. There's the voices in your head. But there is that whisper. And if you listen to that whisper and follow that, I think you'll find yourself.
I love that. That is, I mean, and that is a beautiful, beautiful way to end our story today. Thank you so much, Mark. I love that. Listen to the whispers and fear. You are okay.
You're okay.
You're
We're
okay.
all okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Got it. Thank you.
You have just changed the trajectory of my day, so I appreciate you being here. I really do. Thank you all very much for joining us today. If you want to reach Mark, I will tag him and his business in the comments. We would love for you to, if you love plants or love your plants, Mark would be happy to whisper to them and take care of them in their commercial property or at your. I don't. You do residential? You don't.
Not usually.
Not usually.
On occasion.
Okay. So if you have a business and you want to support Mark's business, we would love for you to reach out to him down below. Thank you very much for being here. You are not stuck in your life. You can choose at any moment to start over and start listening to your whispers. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, whatever your platform may be. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.